26 days after I was born, on the 26th of November 1998, the Kanna rail disaster happened in India. This was huge. A train carrying 2,500 passengers collided with 6 carriages that had been derailed only minutes earlier. News articles all over the world reported that over 100 people had died, 250 were injured, and that this event was India's worst train crash in a long time. Fortunately, my language and literacy journey does not resemble this sight of the twisted wreckage of train carriages, mangled parts of human bodies, and baggage of passengers strewn all around, but rather my learning more resembles the leisurely journey of the Ghan, travelling across Australia from Adelaide to Darwin. As the Ghan begins its journey from the train shed, where it spent the night, it already has a driver. And similarly, when I began my journey in the world, I had a brain that would control my journey through life. The driver drives the train to the main station for the day, and no passengers board during this time from the train shed. This represents the fact that when I was an infant, it was not evident that I was acquiring any language and literacy skills. But then at the city station in Adelaide, a large number of passengers board. In the same way, in the first few years of my life, I had much of my language and literacy knowledge brought on board into my head. Each station along the train line symbolizes another stage in my journey. As the train continues on its journey and goes through the rural areas, there are only a few stations and not many people board. In the same way, as I got older, after I'd learned how to speak English, the rate at which I gained language and literacy skills decreased. At times it was a difficult journey, especially in the desert areas through Australia. For example, in my middle school years, I can remember disliking a few of my textbooks, such as there was a textbook called Thinking Sideways, because I found it so difficult. I found that subject areas that I didn't like, such as writing essays and reports, developed into weaknesses if I wasn't disciplined, since I was less inclined to actually practice those disciplines. However, I simply needed to continue persevering, and I gained additional skills, just like the train gets closer to its final destination by simply continuing to move, even when it gets hard. The train eventually reaches Darwin, and the passengers get off. After a short rest, it is ready to leave again. Large numbers of passengers board for the return trip, and the Ghan returns to Adelaide. It travels continuously back and forth to represent the fact that my journey is continual throughout my life. I will never reach my final destination until the train is beyond repair and is discarded and I die. This metaphor illustrates my language and literacy journey accurately. I grew up learning English, just like the majority of Australian children. Both of my parents are teachers, one's a primary teacher, one's a secondary teacher, so this enabled me to receive the help I needed with my English subjects throughout my schooling years. I homeschooled for most of these years in a remote village called Ora in Papua New Guinea. I believe this assisted me to develop my language and literacy skills rapidly, as I didn't have the distractions of a classroom environment and other students in the class. I was also the only child in my family for about 5 years, so all my early interactions were with adults. According to my father, at age 6, my vocabulary was quite accomplished. Not only did I learn English when I was young, I learned the Kol language. At age 5, I began to assist the local adults in Ora in learning how to read their own language. As a result, I grew up learning not only language and literacy skills in English, but also in Kol. Throughout primary and high school, progress in developing those skills remained fairly consistent. I was an avid reader throughout my schooling years, but due to our remote location in Papua New Guinea, we didn't have a lot of books. So whenever we had a box of books brought in by the helicopter, Mum and Dad would hide them and only bring them out for special occasions. However, I still managed to read quite a lot though, even if it was the same book over and over. This assisted me to develop my language and literacy abilities in the areas of reading and writing and spelling. Another stage of my life in which my language and literacy journey has seen considerable amount of progress is during the last year, in which I've started tertiary study. The required readings and tertiary environment have assisted me to broaden my vocabulary and increase my knowledge of the English language. This has been a rapid period of development in my journey.
Pardon me.
I am strong in the areas of reading and spelling, as well as some forms of writing, especially when I am motivated by a topic. However, one weakness I have, even though I love reading, is that the range of books that I read is generally limited to fictional books and biographies. These books have assisted me in developing my English skills, but since I only read other genres on occasion, my range of vocabulary is limited by that. Since beginning the learning literacy subject, I have discovered a number of other strengths and weaknesses in my English knowledge. The assessments provided in the BKSB program have provided me with suggestions as to which English skills I need to actually work on. These areas include identifying the purposes of various texts, structure and cohesion within texts, and, not surprisingly, my vocabulary. These aspects of English will need to be developed to be used within my tertiary studies. In order to address these weaknesses, I have set a SMART goal. My goal is to complete all 5 of the modules in the BKSB program that were marked as needing practice. I recently have been working through the module that teaches how to identify the purposes of various texts. I've also enjoyed working through the vocabulary module. In conclusion, I have had a consistent language and literacy journey with periods of both rapid development and slower paced learning to achieve the level at which I'm currently working at. Thank you.